So in this video, we will discuss a interesting interview question, right? So what is the question? So the question is, you have to design a class in such a way that when you try to create object out of that, it will allow you only to create 5 objects. When you try to create the sixth object, it should throw error, right? So how to design such a class? Let us see. So this problem is basically an extension of the singleton design pattern, right? So if you know what is the singleton design pattern, you should be able to figure out how to solve this question. So what we will do is we'll go step by step, see a basic class, then I'll also show you how to design a singleton class, and then I will show you how to solve this problem, right? So first let us see a basic class, right? I'll name this class as connection, and I will have a very basic constructor, right? Then what I will do is I'll create two objects out of this, right? So what I can do is const c1 equals to new connection and const c2 equals to new connection. Right now this is just a normal class, right? And when I try to create two different objects, it will give me two different memory location, right? So essentially if I try to do a console log of c1 and c2, right, and if I try to run this one, right, obviously I'll get false, right, because these are two different objects and they're pointing to two different memory location. So obviously c1 will not be equal to c2. Now we'll see what is singleton pattern. So most of the time what happens is when you are dealing with connection string or file operations, you don't want to have multiple connections open. So in this scenario, what we do is we create singleton pattern. What happens in singleton pattern is every time you try to create new instance from the class, you will get the one and only one object. It will return you the same instance. That way your connection is not overloaded, right? So when you try to create new instance, you will get only one and only one copy. As many times as you want to create the instance, you will get the same copy. So let us see how to design such a singleton class. So first thing what I have to do is I have to prevent this new connection. So developer should not be able to use this new keyword to create the instance of my object. So how can I do that? All I have to do is make this constructor private, right? As soon as I do this, you see I'm starting to see errors here. So I cannot create new connection, right? If this is not possible, then how can we create new connection? So what I can do is I will create a public method, right? And I will call it as get instance. Now this guy will return me instance instead of the constructor, right? And what should be the return type of this one? It should return me a connection type object. Why connection type? Because this is the class name. I want this function to return a type of this class, right? So what I can do is I can say return new connection, right? Now one important thing here what we have to do is we have to make this as static. Why static? Because I want to invoke this method with class name, not with the object name, right? Because we don't want to create object here. We should be able to create or call this method from this class name itself, and it will give us an object. Now what I can do here, I can say connection dot get instance, and here also I can do the same thing. Now if I try to run this one, we will still get two different instances, right? Because we have not yet created it as a singleton. It is always returning the new instance, right? So if I run this one, right, I'm still getting false. Okay, now we'll convert it to singleton. So what for that what we have to do? We have to have a one and only one single copy of the object, right? So what I can say is private instance, which will be of type connection. Okay, instance, correct spelling. Okay, and since we want to use this in static method, that is get instance, we have to mark this as static. Now I have removed everything from the get instance method and we'll start from scratch, right? So what we have to do here is we have to check if the instance property that we have in the class, if it has some value or not. If it has some value, we will return that value. That means if this dot instance return this dot instance, right? That means since this is a singleton class, right, if I already have an instance inside the class, I will return that one. If I don't have any instance, I will create a new connection and assign it to that instance object, right? So what I can say is this dot instance equals to new connection, right? And what I have to do here is return this dot instance, right? Now what happened here is when I call this function, it will first check if we have this instance object or instance property available or not. If it is available, it will return the same copy. If it doesn't, it will create a new instance, assign it to the instance object and return that instance. Now if I do this again, create two different objects and try to compare it, earlier since it was not singleton, so I was getting false. Right now, since this is singleton, ideally I should get true because these two are essentially the same object copy, right? So let us see. I'll run this one. Yeah, right now I'm getting true. That means this has now become a singleton class. Every time I call the get instance method, I'll get one and only one copy of the object. Right now, coming to our question, what we have to do is we should be able to create only 5 objects. Once we try to create the sixth object, it should start throwing error. So let us have few variables that will store 5 or how many number of variables you want to objects you want to create. So I'll say private and it will be static, right? And I will say max count equals to 5. Now I'll create one more variable that will keep track of the counter, right? And it will start from 0, right? And I will remove everything. We'll start from scratch. So every time I call this method, I will do the increment, counter increment, right? So this dot counter plus plus. Now we will do a validation. How many objects we have created? If it is less than the max counter, we will return new object, right? So if this dot counter is less than equals to this dot max instance, that means whatever is the max instance, we are still at the less number, right? So if max instance is 5, we have created either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 object yet. So in this scenario, what I want to return, I want to return new connection, right? Because I'm still at the lower end of the count, right? I have not yet reached to the max instance. Else if I have reached the max instance, what I will do, I will throw new error and give it a message, right? Say max count reached, right? I can give an error message like that, right? Now let us test this one. So what I can do is I'll create a try catch block, try, and I'll say catch, right? E of type any, and I will say log e dot message, right? And in try block, what I will do, I will just copy this much, right? Paste it here, and I'll delete this one, right? And let me create few more instances, few more object creation, right? So I have created 6 objects, right? So for the time being, let me comment out this one, right? And I will try to run. Ideally I should not get any error, and what I can do is I will give a console log, right? Say success, right? If I reached here, that means it is a success scenario, right? And here I am just creating only 5 object, right? Now let us run this one. So I got the success message. That means 5 instance I'm able to create. Now let me uncomment this one, 6th object. Now it should throw error. Let me save. I will run this one again, right? Max count reached, which is coming from this console message, log error message from the catch block, right? That means when I try to create the 6th object, it is throwing error. That's what is the interview question, right? So next time if you face this interview question, I hope you will be able to answer this question, right? And if you find this video helpful, please give it a like, and I'll be bringing more such content in my channel. So if you want to be updated on that, please do subscribe my channel. Thanks.